Hello Internet, I'm the Disney Brain, and with Super Ninja Steel finally back, it's high time to check up on the current iteration of the franchise. Even though I didn't have much to say about any of the episodes beyond the Super Season startup, I would say this. This Super Season marks a slight improvement over its not-super predecessor, and I've literally never been able to say that before. But despite that, nothing really jumped out at me as discussion worthy until this most recent episode caught my attention, as the video title probably implies. It's not an exceptional episode of Power Rangers, but it does give us something interesting to discuss leading up to the 25th anniversary special. So, with all that said, let's talk about how Outfoxed outdid itself to become arguably the best episode of the season so far, a title I hope will soon be ripped away by dimensions in danger. The mid-season break left us on a major cliffhanger. Our heroes got their butts kicked and their Zord stars dismantled, giving them no good way to fight against the pending threat of Madame Odius' Foxatron. Say what you will about the vast majority of recent Ranger villains, most of which have been lackluster, but Odius has proven herself a cut above most of the Neo-Saban suit dwellers. She's crafty, she knows how to escalate a fight, sometimes, which already puts her head and shoulders above Sledge, Galvanax, Xandrid, etc. She has the ability to legitimately challenge these Rangers, albeit an inconsistent ability, and she's comfortable with getting in on the action when needs be. She likely won't be cracking anyone's top 10 lists, but she's more than serviceable for this season. Ringing endorsement aside, the Rangers still need to find a way to stop Foxatron before it recharges, which may or may not be a Serpentera reference. Mick is struggling to fix the Rangers' damaged Zord stars, but, just in the nick of time, new Zords appear. Well, that was easy. They follow the general Ninja Steel formula, but the new Zord stars are stuck? Huh, not so easy. And from out of the void arrives three cloaked individuals who are definitely not legendary Rangers. They say that the stars will only come out when the Rangers prove they are worthy of them. I really like the implied undertone of this, which we'll get back to. The Rangers keep doing Ranger stuff, assuming that this will eventually unlock the new Zord stars. But it doesn't. Interesting. Thankfully, Mick comes up with the idea to supercharge the stars back into working status. A pretty brilliant idea, honestly, and later on, it proves to work. The problem is, there's not enough time to jumpstart every Zord star and stop Foxatron. But before that happens, the Rangers keep finding themselves in situations where their help is needed. This is really where the meat of the episode is, so we'll break it down now. And we'll start by coming back to that implied undertone I mentioned before. This team is one of the least challenged ever. They do good things, sure, but they never get tested in significant or interesting ways. So, isn't it fitting that this team, a team that doesn't really go through many hurdles beyond just being Rangers, are the ones being called out for not being worthy yet? These Rangers, who only inherit their powers because a flying Beyblade told them to stick their hands deep inside of it. What the hell did I just say? So I found it pretty perfect that the guy who had to earn his morpher, the guy who had to constantly prove himself, both to his father and to his teammates, is the same guy leading the charge here. The one trying to push them further as heroes, and they go about this in a surprisingly well-constructed way. At first, this random new girl seems very much random, but then the Ranger Tribunal comes out, followed by the missing ring, and you put two and two together. It seems like such a simple thing, and it is, but Ninja Steel really doesn't do this much. In fact, in the very first episode of Super Ninja Steel, the team left civilians hanging out to dry with an anti-monster spray they knew wasn't going to work. Someone could have easily died while they hid under cover. Works for the whole ninja motif, but not good teaching tape for being an effective Ranger. The simple, yet necessary nature of their actions here, countered by their lack of such actions in most other episodes, VR notwithstanding, was the perfect way for this team to prove themselves. And what's more, they had to prove themselves to real Rangers who have been in their position before. How said Rangers know detailed information about the Ninja Steel is beyond me, but maybe the next episode gives us insight on that. And adding on to that is the ticking clock that is Foxatron. The Rangers really can't afford to faff around, but they also can't and shouldn't use that as an excuse for not helping when and where they can. Because as Wild Force, as well as so many other seasons proudly inform us, the worth of a ranger is many times attributed to what they do when things aren't ideal. What they're willing to do, willing to sacrifice when they can't call upon the spandex to fix things. And that doesn't always have to take the form of a real fight. Call it cheesy, call it obvious, it's definitely both, but it was also the exact right lesson. A lesson that stemmed more from the subtle narrative of the season versus the general idea of being good for goodness sake. For me, that places it head and shoulders above that one time Brody generically learned about teamwork. So afterwards, the Zords come and the Rangers defeat Foxatron. The cloaked figures are proud of their progress, and one slyly reveals that he was Alex the whole time. Well, probably not. I do know who the other two are, but for those of you not deeply entrenched in Ranger news, I'll just play it safe and slap the spoiler tag on it. All in all, this anniversary special is already shaping up to be a whole lot better than the previous one. Mainly because, whether intentionally or not, they found a nice way to ingrain it into the season itself, as opposed to making it a cameo-driven side project. But only time will tell if the lesson here was internalized, or if it ends up being just another one-off plot point. And while I have you all here, let's briefly discuss the Galactic Ninjas. One of the issues of Ninja Steel that we haven't really talked much about is the incorporation of its motif. The idea of ninjas has almost no bearing on the season, outside of a handful of gimmicky tricks and powers, which is pretty disappointing for this super season specifically, since the so-called world's greatest ninja is available now, and could be teaching the Rangers more about the philosophy of his chosen profession, and how that's different from just being a Ranger. Maybe even sneak in a tiny, small little reference about where he learned it all from. Wouldn't cost you a dime and everyone would love it. Basically, it comes down to this with the Galactic Ninjas. If there was some type of firm foundation for how our Earth Ninjas operate this season, the Galactic Ninjas could essentially counter that with a somewhat different philosophy, one that pits them against the Rangers as more than just souped up weakly monsters, one that makes their antagonist nature not so cut and dry. But doing all that well, or even doing it at all, would have taken the kind of patience and setup that Ninja Steel has proven very allergic to. So, what can you do? All in all, Outfoxed stands tall as a great episode of Ninja Steel, and yeah, even though that distinction doesn't say much, we can still see why it's at least a good episode by its own merits. It was exactly the push that these Rangers needed, and having just came back from staffing Power Morphicon, where I also tried to put people first, it was exactly the episode I needed. And whether you feel the same or differently, let me know down below. In a few days from now, we'll talk about how all this resolves when the rest of the cameos arrive. But until then, thanks for watching.